Hi there and welcome to AnsibleFest 2022. In this session, we're going to cover getting hands-on and started with Ansible in less than 5 minutes. I'm going to be showing you 3 different ways in which you can quickly have an Ansible environment running, with each of them taking less than 5 minutes. No matter who you are or what your setup is, you'll be able to be hands-on in Ansible by the end of this session. My name is James Spurrin and I'll be taking you through this. I'm a course creator and I'm the author of DiveInto Ansible. With this, I've guided and helped over 30,000 students get started with their Ansible journey, taking them right the way through from basics to advanced topics. For my course to assist students, I've created an awesome open-sourced Ansible Lab, and this lab has currently had over 250,000 Docker pulls. As well as being a course creator, I'm also a Docker captain, and this lab environment makes use of Docker. Don't worry if you're new to Docker, everything you need will be covered in this session. The lab environment will give you a fully working Ansible control host, 6 nodes, 3 of which being Ubuntu, and another 3 being CentOS, so that you've actually got some variety, and when you're actually creating your playbooks, you can actually target them so they will work across Linux distributions if you desire. You'll get web terminal access to each of the nodes, or you could actually access them via SSH. You'll also get reverse proxy access to each of the nodes. Therefore, if you were to run any web services on them like Nginx, you'll be able to access each node accordingly. All of this is presented through a friendly portal, and as a user, you just use the portal and navigate to wherever you need. This environment can be used with any Ansible training. Obviously, I recommend my own, but the most important thing is that you actually start using Ansible in the way that you're most comfortable. I'm going to show you 3 different ways of running the lab, and you can actually choose the approach that suits you best. The first approach is using Google Cloud Shell. This is great as Google provides for free a Cloud Shell tier that anyone can access, just using a standard Google account. At the time, you get 4 cores and 16 gig of RAM, which is perfect for an Ansible lab. We also have a great tutorial option with this, which makes it nice and easy to set up. Let's take a look. We're going to navigate to diveinto.com/p/playground, and from there we'll click Open in Google Cloud Shell. And at this point, you don't actually need to trust the repository to continue. You can if you want, but it's not a requirement for this to work, and it will work as expected even without it being implicitly trusted. So this is actually provisioning our Cloud Shell instance, and when this starts, you'll actually see this tutorial on the right-hand side. And the great thing about this tutorial, you can just click the steps and it will action them for you. First step is actually cloning the lab environment. We can scroll down, copy to Cloud Shell, press return, and that has actually cloned the environment. The next step, during the course, we actually talk about what SSH keys are. We configure SSH keys for all of the different nodes for both the Ansible and the root user. With this environment, you can actually shortcut this, and this one command will actually pre-configure SSH keys for every node and for both the Ansible and root user when the lab environment starts, which is great for Ansible. Next, we're going to launch the environment. This process will take between 45 and 60 seconds on average, and what it's actually doing at this point, it's pulling the container images down for each of those instances. When the environment starts up, what you'll actually see is attaching to, and the order might be different to those, but you'll actually see this as attaching to each of the containers. And then once that's actually ready, we can access the portal for the lab environment. And within this Cloud Shell environment, you've actually got this web preview icon. So we can see at the bottom there, we've got attach into. I'm going to click this and this will actually guide me as to where the actual button is there at the top. And if we click this, we can actually preview on port 8080. And this has actually opened this in a new tab, and we now have the DiveInto Ansible Lab environment. So you can actually go through here. You've got access to the Ansible terminal, you've got access to your host terminals and to reverse proxies. So if we actually go into this and we access the Ansible terminal, and here I'm going to enter the username of Ansible and the password of password. And if you actually wanted to access the root account, you can use root and password. You can actually connect to all of your node instances. For example, if I pick Ubuntu 1 and CentOS 1, you can actually see there that that's pingable. And the same for the CentOS hosts. We can actually SSH to all of these because we actually did that one step. So for example, I'll accept the key and you can actually see there that we've connected as Ansible at Ubuntu 1. I'll do the same again. This time, however, I'll do it with the root account. And if you're already familiar with Ansible, you'll know that this is actually brilliant for us because we've got a setup where we can actually dive straight into using Ansible with all of these nodes. We've also got Ansible installed and pre-configured. So for example, we can see the Ansible version there, and this is ready to go. So let's actually try something out from the command line to actually test this against all of our nodes. So we'll use the Ansible CLI here, and we'll make a makeshift inventory on the command line, and we'll try pinging all of our hosts. After the -I for inventory, I'm going to use the comma option so that we can actually enter the various hosts that we've actually got here on the command line. We'll specify all to ping all of our hosts. -M to specify a module. The module we're going to use is ping, and we'll do -O to actually output this as a one line. You can actually see there, I'm going to do one minor thing here. I'm just going to Control-C that, and I'm actually going to put Ansible host key check-in equals false. And I'll just retry that command again. And there we go. You can actually see it's accepted the SSH key for each of those without me having to actually type yes for each of them. So we're in a really good spot here. We know that Ansible is configured and is working as desired. Let's actually try out a more complex example, something where we're actually using a playbook. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to actually clone the repository from my course. And then we cd into that directory. And if we take a look, we're going to go into Ansible Playbooks Introduction. Then we're going to go into Ansible Playbooks Creating and Executing. And we're going to go into the Solution directory and into Revision 9. And we have got a fully fledged example here. You can actually see we've got the Nginx playbook, we've got our inventory, we've got some group vars and some host vars. During the course, there is one configuration item that we actually do to CentOS 1 where for learning experience, we actually change the SSH port that it's running on. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove the custom host var here because we haven't actually done that step. And now what we can actually do is run that Nginx playbook. Okay, great. So you can see there that it's successfully gathered facts for all 6 of our nodes, so CentOS 1, 2, and 3, and Ubuntu 1, 2, and 3. The next step was installing EPEL. The CentOS hosts, they require EPEL because EPEL is a prerequisite for the next step, which is installing Nginx. So you can actually see that's the task we're on now, and we're installing Nginx on all of our nodes. So that's completed successfully on the CentOS ones, and there we go, it's just wrapping up on the Ubuntu ones. We're restarting Nginx, then we are templating a website example to the Nginx server. We're installing unzip on each of the nodes, and we've actually got an interesting game there. So we've actually unarchived, unzipped the playbook stacker game. We've run a handler where we're actually checking that the service is running, and we're good to go. So what I'm going to do now, because Nginx is actually running on each of those nodes, if we go back to the portal interface and we click reverse proxy, we can now access the web server on any of these. So all 6 of these are running Nginx and are running that web page. If I actually pick one, I'll pick Ubuntu 2. You can actually see we have now accessed through the reverse proxy the website running on that. Just to make this even more interesting, this example that I actually chose here, it has a hidden Easter egg. You can click the icon, so depending on which one you clicked, you'll either see a Ubuntu or CentOS icon there, and we have this really cool Ansible theme game that you can try out. And for anyone who's worked with YAML, we know how important indentation is, and with this game, what you've actually got to do is line up your various plays. So that wasn't a good start there, but let's just see. And along the way, you will have different things. So there will be an Ansible theme balloon and some different planes and various different ones. So give that a go if you're actually trying out the lab environment. Okay, so that's the lab running in Google Cloud Shell. We can also use this directly in Docker Desktop using the latest Docker Desktop functionality known as extensions. I've created a Docker Desktop extension for the lab environment, allowing you to easily run this on Docker Desktop for Mac, Windows, and Linux as a one-liner. Let's take a look at this. If we go to the Docker Desktop dashboard, you can actually see there, currently I have no extensions installed and I'm on the default page there. I don't actually have any containers running. What we're going to do, you go to your terminal, or if you're on Windows, you go to your command prompt, and we execute the command docker extension install /DiveInto Ansible -extension : latest. And then we choose yes. And if we go back to the Docker Desktop dashboard, we can actually see there we've got some containers running, and on the left-hand side, you can actually see there DiveInto Ansible. So if we click that, we've got the portal interface. Notice at the top here, we have Home within its own tab, and we can actually access these. And as we click each one of them, they will become a tab within the Docker Desktop environment itself. So if I actually go back and I click one of the host terminals, you can actually see there for Ubuntu 2. And this is the same for any of the instances that you access and the reverse proxies. Anytime you need to use a quick Ansible environment, you can just go straight into the Docker Desktop extensions pane and access DiveInto Ansible from the left-hand side. And if you wanted to start again, you can just remove the extension and reinstall. I'm just going to go on the side there, manage extensions, and I'm going to uninstall that extension. And just like that, it's gone. And lastly, we can run this direct using Docker Compose, which will allow you to open this anywhere you're able to actually run Docker. To do this, we clone or download the lab. I'm on a Mac system here which has Git, so I'm going to clone it. If you're on Windows, download the zip file and then zip it, or install Git so you can actually clone it as well. Just to note, on Windows, you do actually want to clone this to your user home directory, and I recommend the use of the command prompt rather than a WSL environment. Let's just clone this. And then we just cd into that directory. And we do a docker-compose up. And with that done, we can now access the lab environment on localhost :1000. And there we have it. We have the portal interface, and once again, we can actually go through this and access any of our instances. So there we have it. We've now covered 3 different ways of getting started with Ansible. If this has helped you, or if it can help somebody in your team, a friend or a colleague, please pass it on. The more people using Ansible, the better. Lastly, remember to connect with me on social networks, James Spurrin, and at James Spurrin on Twitter. And if you've enjoyed this, do tag me in and also tag in AnsibleFest. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of AnsibleFest 2022.